and welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy. This is Skeptic Generation. It is season 4. We actually made it. Oh my gosh, and we've got some big plans. Thank you all so much for joining. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday. We have a guest. I'm very, very excited to bring her on. Let's see, are there any things before I dive into this? Yes, we've been getting a lot of calls about politics. And it's about time I bring in some help. I'm really, really excited to introduce my friend Tori. Let me bring them in now. Tori, you are live on the show. Hey.
Hello.
Hey, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You know, we have talked about doing podcast stuff together for like a year and a half.
Yeah, since you moved here.
Yeah, since I moved here. I'm really glad you decided to join. Thank you.
Thanks for the invite. I'm so excited.
Yeah. For the people watching, tell us about you. Who the hell are you?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, so I am a podcaster. I have 2 podcasts. One called White Homework is about anti-racism. And I have a podcast called Go Home Bible, You're Drunk, which is about leaving church after being religious, specifically evangelical, but we have, ex-Catholic and ex-Mormon listeners. And so, if you've left like a high demand, high control religion, you'll probably enjoy the show if you have like a cheeky, snarky sense of humor at all. So that's what that is about. And I grew up
explains,
here.
By the way, the wonderful video and audio. Like, you definitely seem like you're, for sure, ready to go. But sorry, you grew up at...
I grew up here in Portland. I've lived in the Pacific Northwest my whole life. And I was raised evangelical. And I did not leave until I turned 30. So I was in it of my own volition for a very long time. I mean, part of it was I didn't really understand how to not be evangelical, which is part of the way that they set it up, is they don't want you to figure that out until after you're stuck. And so, but I've always been a very kind of curious person, probably have a touch of the tism. Most likely, both of my kids do. It's genetic. It had to have come from somewhere. So that's sort of a little bit about me that I was in for a long time. And I'm really excited to be able to just live my life and create my own values and care about things like harm reduction.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's really important. So.
Sorry, there are things to take apart there. The first is it is definitely lonely, and they definitely make it feel like when you leave the faith, you're inventing it, what right, nobody's ever done this before. The number of people when I was working at the atheist community of Austin who would come in and be like, oh, I have deconverted and I'm writing a book because everybody needs this resource. And the fact is that there aren't enough resources for people who are on their way out to go, oh, hey, I'm not alone. And that's definitely one of the big reasons for this show.
I love that.
Yeah. So hopefully we can, work together on counteracting that just a little bit. I do have a couple quick technical notes. The first is it looks like the Twitch stream is offline. And we're probably not going to get that back on this episode, but we will get that worked out and figure out what's going on. But I want to be able to focus on you. So doing that kind of tech check in the middle of the show is weird. The other is SR, if you want to hop back into Call-In Studio. I'm not seeing you there. I want to make sure that you are there and everything's looking good. That said, we have open lines. I would love to talk to people. I had some calls about communism and about socialism last week, and I invited them to call back, and I definitely love those conversations. If people want to call in about not just politics, but religion, have a question for Tori, want to talk about the podcast, or just want to talk about, your journey or apologetics, now's the time. Let me put the phone number up there. The phone number is 412-SKEPGEN. That's 412-753-7436. Or you can go to tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. That's tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. Our call screener is on the line, ready to go. And yeah, we'd be happy to talk to you. Okay. So, there is a reason why I wanted you specifically when it comes to politics. And a lot of it has to do with your takes on Twitter.
Okay.
So, just to kind of seed, this out for the audience and for people who are watching, like, how have you been engaging? Have you been politically active just since you joined, or just since you kind of deconverted? Have you always had a mind towards it? Like, what's...
Okay, Eric.
Talk to me.
I was raised by an anti-abortion activist in Portland.
I did not know that.
So I was watching anti-abortion propaganda films before I could read,
Fuck.
which is not appropriate. I will just say very quickly, if you know the
Yeah.
content that they put in those films,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
not for children. And I was going to meetings with my mom where they were organizing to protest abortion rights protections here in the state because they, it was all people from church, right? Mm-hmm. And so, we'd go to church on Sunday, and then like Monday morning, like all the ladies would get together and talk about how they were going to drive down to Salem to the state capitol to protest. And so I was kind of thrown into politics, not of my own volition. And, there was this idea in the 70s and 80s that was being pushed by, Jerry Falwell and
moral majority type stuff.
Yeah. James Dobson, people that, like, if conservatives could just outbreed the libs
Mm-hmm.
and have a bunch of kids, that they could fight, like, they'd have more people in the army, essentially, to take over the country for God. That's how I was raised. So I didn't necessarily become political because it was something I was super interested in.
Yeah.
I did become interested in it, like, kind of, reading history and such. But
Okay. So
I was thrown into it.
That just opens up so many more things. Okay, so first off, were you aware of the Quiverful movement, or did they just happen to parallel each other?
We were aware of it, but like kind of adjacent to, not participating in, but it was the same idea.
Yeah. And just
it wasn't explicitly that, though.
Okay. And just for people who don't know what that is, they're like, it definitely feels like the right-wing Christian, like, as a group, get involved in conspiracy and large, like, machinations in ways that are so intense that they think that everybody does it. And so the reason why they accuse Democrats and or of these large conspiracies is because they're taking part in them. And one of them is the Seven Mountains Mandate. The Seven Mountains Mandate being different pillars of different, all the things that they need to do to take over society. And that includes controlling the media, controlling political narrative, the discourse, controlling the government, the judiciary. I don't remember the others. Do you?
Education, business.
Education, absolutely.
Yeah. So, it's like culture and the arts. They believe that there is a biblical, scriptural mandate that they have a right to be in charge of all of these things. Mm-hmm. And there are some people within this movement, which is generally called dominionism, right? Mm-hmm. That they're supposed to have dominion over the seven pillars of society, essentially.
Yep.
That essentially they claim that the rapture won't happen. Jesus won't come back to take them away and kill all of their enemies for them. It's really lovely theology.
Yeah.
They're in charge of. all of those things.
Yeah. So just like the Seven Mountains Mandate, by the way, people, you can Google it. This is not a conspiracy theory this is actually a thing.
It's out there.
And like that, the we're going to outbreed the libs is, there is a movement very, very expressly saying that is what we're doing. And it's called the Quiverful movement. We are going to have our quiver of arrows. We're going to fill it with as many new humans as possible that we can raise in the church so that we can outnumber the other side. Conspiracy. Okay, so you didn't have the quiverful, but you did have the moral majority. Satanic Panic.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah!
It was everywhere.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, we weren't allowed to like go trick or treating. People were children specifically were being like snatched off of the streets for sacrifices and what have you. Yeah. So there were just all, which is just they can't ever come up with new ideas, which is really interesting to me.
You know that I actually no. So there was a point in time a few years ago I got invited onto a Christian podcast and got to sit and talk to one of the OGs who made that shit up back in the day.
Okay.
Like after the show, I'll send you a link. The guy's name is Bill Schneblin, and he's a fucking maniac. But yeah, no, that it's still a thing, and yeah, that's definitely something I grew up with too. We've got that in common.
Yeah.
I definitely remember all of the we're about the same age, right? We've talked about this not too long ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember all the outrage around Marilyn Manson and Columbine?
I do, but that was again kind of only tangentially related to me specifically because we were all homeschooled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was like we knew about it sort of, but it didn't, it was because of Columbine. The idea was like all the homeschool families were like, see, we were right. You should keep your kids at school.
Keep your kids home.
So you should keep your kids at home and educate them at home because the schools are inherently dangerous or something, which
is insane. Yeah. Okay.
It's incorrect. Yeah.
Well, I'm feeling that out. So, okay, we are getting callers in. I'm excited about that. But before we get to callers, like we set the stage now. You're not protesting outside of abortion clinics anymore. What happened?
No, I'm not actually. I really like to go and talk to protesters in front of abortion clinics now because I really want to. Yeah, I really want to talk to them. But actually, what happened was I got pregnant, and it's hard. And I was like, anyone who thinks that someone should be forced to go through this alone or if they don't want to is wrong. Like just the amount of people think that it's like a side hustle. Being pregnant is a side hustle and you can just do it in your off time and like go to work and like everything. And it's just,
you got a punch card.
It's not. Yeah. But if you think about it like a punch card, it is the equivalent of 3 years of working a 40-hour work week. Right? Like the amount of time that's a lot of labor. Yeah. And I'm really appreciating the people who are now pointing out that like America doesn't have a social safety net. We have women. And there's all of this labor that like should be paid for because it's work. Yeah. We're like, no, that has no value and also is sacred. Very super capitalist way to look at things.
So when you're talking about labor, let's get specific. What labor are you talking about? Are you talking about
pregnancy is a lot of work, and we think that you should just be able to continue about your life and be pregnant at the same time, and everything's fine. And it's not like that. Like some people do have very easy pregnancies. I would say mine was in the middle, and it's just the ability to get yourself to your job every day if you are pregnant is impressive. And we don't think about it like that. We think about it as like I'm making like Canva templates for my side gig, when I'm not working.
Got knocked up. I had an abortion last Thursday. If I'm on schedule, we're going to get another one by the end of the month. It's going to be great.
Oh yeah, we should definitely get into that at some point. Getting abortions for fun, like right? Seriously.
Yeah. This is definitely the time for it. All right, I have calls, and I would love to dive into them. Are you ready to take our
Okay.
first call?
Sure. Let's do it.
All right. Were you able to hop into Call-In Studio or no?
Let's see here.
If not,
My shows. I think I can. Host show?
yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead and hop in, and then you can see the callers and just tell me who you want to take.
Sweet.
And
Are
we
they
will
in
take
order?
them. So one of them is being screened. You can see Danny D is currently in the screening room, and it looks like Sunny
okay.
is already screened and ready to go.
Sweet. Let's talk to Sunny.
All right. Sunny, you are live on the show. How's it going?
Hey! Oh man, we've got so much snow coming down right here in central Indiana. It is beautiful, but everybody stay safe, please.
Oh, can you send some over to
So jealous.
Portland? We haven't gotten any
Please.
yet. Yeah.
Let me tell you what, I'll make a snowball and throw it as hard as I can. If it does make its way to you, there you
Appreciate it. Just make sure you really wind that up.
go. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. At some point, we're going to digress about the fishes, because the fishes is a thing in Portland, and not plowing or salting the roads. But Tori, I'm going to ask you about that later as a new Portlander. But Sunny, what did you want to talk about?
Yeah, you guys mentioned Seven Mountains, and that got me excited because I've had an experience in my local community where Seven Mountains tried to, in their own words, gain influence over our local arts association. And I wanted to share that story with you guys and ask Tori some advice on how to deal with this situation, or if she might have handled it differently.
Yeah.
It's a short one.
Yeah. I'll leave you to. Yeah, go for it.
Sure. Okay. So since you guys already covered what Seven Mountains is and what their goal is, listeners are up to date, so I won't bother going into that explanation again. But I have recently gotten more active in my local arts association. There's a local art gallery in town. It's wonderful. The community there is fantastic. And I've taken up the habit of showing up at board meetings just to hang out. And I was at one somewhat recently, and a lady had come in to represent Seven Mountains. And she said that there were some rumors going around that she wanted to clear up and that she wanted to ease concerns. But as soon as I saw the Seven Mountains logo and heard some of the things she was saying, my hackles were raised because I was familiar with this group already. And she did her best to try to make it seem benign and harmless and just a good way to get some funding, because what these people do is they go into local small communities that are hurting for cash, and they've got, I don't know where this money comes from, but they've got these monetary resources that they kind of wave in front of your face and say, hey, we'll give you some money, and in return you can do us some favors. And she explained, we're not diminutive, as these rumors have said. We just want to gain influence.
We're not diminutive, we're dominionist.
Yeah. So I very politely, even though I wasn't a board member, I very politely spoke up and said, hey, I'm familiar with your group, and I want to explain to the rest of the board what your group does. So I explained to the rest of the people at that board meeting what Seven Mountains likes to do, and she was not, the lady that was there with Seven Mountains was not happy about it. Later on, I heard that she was offended by what I had said, but I was very polite, actually, and I even told her, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I've heard about your group. I explained to the board,
this is like mustache twirling, like world domination type conspiracy bullshit. Oh, so I didn't realize this. Do Seven Mountains have like an office? Like I when I think like Quiverful, I think of grassroots, local groups who are using this general idea of let's have lots of kids and crazy bullshit like that. But
ideology, not like an official,
not like a group
location
with like a logo and a 501c3 or something like that. Like, is there an address? Was this person legitimately representing the organization Seven Mountains Mandate?
So what they do, this is really sneaky. So what they do is they create local nonprofits within the community, and those local nonprofits are secretly, they don't make it public that they're affiliated with Seven Mountains, but if if you look, you can find it.
Okay,
So in my local community, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to dox myself or get, people who don't mean to be involved with these people in trouble. But there's a local group that's a nonprofit who claims that their main goal is to help my local community get healthier. And, they promote outdoor activities and healthy eating and stuff like that. That's really good that this community really needs. And they talk to organizations like the Arts Association through this nonprofit that is not named Seven Mountains and gets affiliated with them in that way. And then if we accept money from this group and we don't do what Seven Mountains wants us to do, we could lose funding. And that if you become dependent on that funding, that can be harmful. They could, in the words that this lady used, have influence over what we do as an arts association. So I hope does that explain it better?
It does, and I definitely want to give Tori a chance to talk to you. I just had one more question, and that is, okay, two, really quick. So the first is was this person like mask off going, okay, you caught us, we're Seven Mountains. Now I'm going to describe it because I don't get that part. And then one other bit, and that is, it's kind of vague. It's kind of ambiguous. We give you money and you do what we want. Did you get any examples of things that they would want you to do in exchange for their money? Like, did you get any like, we want you to take this down or give this a spot of prevalence or something like that?
Luckily, we didn't get to that point yet, and that's why I spoke up, because I didn't want it to get to that point. And I saw that on the horizon. But essentially, when I called out what Seven Mountains really does, this lady who had just donated money to the Art Association said, well, maybe we don't need to be affiliated in the future, basically saying, well, maybe, I'm not going to give you any more money. And the Art Association, which kudos to them, one of the people on the board offered to take out his own checkbook and give her money back from the money that she had donated to us without telling us what we were basically signing up for.
Nice.
But she had passed out flyers at this meeting with Seven Mountains logo on it. I guess.
Got it.
Not thinking that somebody there would know what it is, because in a local community like this, folks are just going to assume that it's another charitable church organization, because we have a lot of that in our area.
Sure.
And if you don't know, you don't know. So I'm glad that I was there to kind of educate them on it, and they did we kept our distance from that organization after that.
Okay. Tori, what do you think?
That's really, okay, first of all, Sunny, I just want to say I'm so impressed that you caught that. Like, seriously, standing ovation. Like, that's amazing.
Well, I just recently listened to that NPR embedded podcast series. Oh, I think the name of the episode that mentions groups like this is Onward Christian Soldiers. I can't remember the name of the series, but if you look up embedded Onward Christian Soldiers, you'll find it. But they had just talked about it, so it was fresh in my mind.
Wow, that's great. I'm kind of surprised that they like put their logo on there. I mean, it is kind of one of those things. It's what they think that the little Christian fish on your car is supposed to be, is like this like secret symbol that like only people who know. It's like it's not that. But I'm really impressed that you caught that. I think that's great. Eric, just to answer your question, I think some of the things that they would do would be like no gender neutral bathrooms, or we'll pull our funding, right? You can't show this piece of art because we think it's sexual, right? Things like that. Right. And so, yeah, they just want control. And I think that like the way that this was handled, where you kind of very politely shamed this woman and sent her back to her little hidey hole, I think is perfect, honestly. And yeah, these organizations, I mean, they get a lot of funding through, it's really interesting. And it's like, it's hard to pin down, but there are many families with a lot of money who donate to certain causes like this. I would say like the DeVos family comes to mind kind of immediately in terms of people who want to put money into gaining control, right? And this is really interesting right now. Conservatives are so, and have been for many years, because like I've talked about this on my show, that it's like they want to have cultural influence. They want to be they want to be kind of like culture influencers. And it's kind of interesting. I think they've made a little bit of headway there with the whole like trad wife thing, but otherwise they haven't really been able to successfully sell this idea. And, culture has broadly ignored them, and they've broadly ignored art. Like they don't have any real interest in art, which is funny to me, because it's like they want to be kind of influential in that way, and also they don't understand. It's like they're not teaching all those little homeschool kids and kids who are going to Christian schools are not learning anything about like art history, because art is sexual, right? Which is part of why they want to control it. They think that like having kids exposed to different ideas, especially through things like art, culture, media, is what makes you queer or trans or Black. That's a joke. And so they're like empathetic towards Black people, maybe is what I should say. And so, yeah, they're absolutely using these little avenues to kind of gain influence in smaller communities. And they use smaller communities very intentionally to test out what they're doing, smaller communities and smaller states, to kind of test these things out. Right. I think like Oklahoma, again, is like a really good example of where people who believe this stuff are putting a lot of money into using Oklahoma as like a testing ground for Christian nationalist ideas. And then it's like, well, we've put all this money into the system, and now we get to tell you what books you can read in classrooms, etc. So yeah, that's what they're moving towards. That's not necessarily what they've executed on, but I do think that this was like a really great. I think your group's response, Sunny, was like perfect, like spot on.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm pretty proud of them, the way they responded to it. There were some people that just didn't understand. Like they thought that we were just attacking a local Christian organization, because there are some Christians in the Arts Association. And they're used to churches being charitable and giving money, but this is different. And it was really hard to explain to them how this was different, because this comes with strings attached, and not strings, chains, eventually. And it was hard to kind of explain that to them. But I think I got through to them. But I'm just happy that they took the stance that they're not going to accept checks from that organization because of their ties to that Seven Mountains movement. And that only would have happened, or that only happened because there are people on the board who had also heard rumors about this group and were willing to listen to me when I explained it and do research afterwards. So just keep an eye out in your local communities, because these people are out there and they are trying to gain influence.
Definitely. Was there anything else? We're feeling good?
Yeah. Okay. That was great. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling in. I appreciate it. I always like when you call, Sunny. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, guys. All right, I'll see you later.
Take care.
Bye.
Yep.
First call of the new year. Whew. That was good. I like it. Okay, Seven Mountains seemed to be the thing that took off. That's cool. Before we move forward to our next call, I would love to put the phone number out there and get some more callers. We've got new people. I'm seeing a lot of new people in the chat who are saying, "Hey, what's this all about? What's going on?" If you are new to the chat, hey, welcome to the show. We talk about religion, and on the first Sunday of the month, we're going to be talking about politics too. If you want to talk about what you believe and why, if you have an argument, you want to talk about why, communism is bad, socialism is bad, or, Republicans are evil, or whatever the case is, we want to take those calls. We want to talk about it, and we want to try and bring some clarity and some skepticism to the shit that you're seeing every day, especially... I can't say especially now. It's been over the last 10 years. People say we live in a post-truth society. I don't know. Okay, before I get really depressed, let me put the phone number out there, and then I'll let's put this out here. 412-SKEPGEN. That's 412-753-7436. Or you can go to tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. That's tiny.cc/SKEPGEN. Everything is paid for by the show. So yeah, toll free. We would love to talk to you. All right. With that said, let's move on to... Let's talk to Danny in North Carolina. Danny, you're live on the show.
Hey, I told you I'd call back this week.
I appreciate it. Let's get Tori up to speed on your calls. So Tori, Danny has called in about a couple of times about different topics, but recently Danny was in an accident, worked in HVAC and fell through a
Hmm.
ceiling and hurt his back really badly. And
Oh,
that has led.
Knee.
I'm sorry? Your
It was
knee.
my knee.
Your knee. Thank you. I apologize. And ultimately, that's led to talking about unions, about support for and how we can be there for each other. And Danny, I'm glad you called in because I feel like there's definitely more that Tori can say about that stuff than I can. But you also wanted to give an update. So what's going on?
So since last week, I really haven't had an update on the work side of it. But y'all were talking about the Oklahoma superintendent. That actually goes back into what we were talking about last week. Start local. You know, don't shoot for the stars when we're trying to get things fixed. Let's start in local areas. Your town, your superintendents,
yep.
your city mayor, council. I feel like
Absolutely.
us as progressives, a lot of us try to jump too far ahead instead of actually building up a base. Because if we have a base of sand, we're never going to get the house built.
So true. This is so true. I'm like, yes, Danny, I completely agree with you. I think that you're right. We'd have these like really great, like kind of starry-eyed ideals, and like the work of building to that point is kind of often sort of neglected. Yeah, having again grown up very conservative, I have seen how they're all just like little worker bees kind of on the ground doing all of the things in all of their communities, and it makes me nervous. So yeah, completely agree.
Yeah. Part of the way, as I was talking to Eric last week, that I'm fixing it is I have been involved in a little more stuff in my community. I have a friend that voted for Trump, and like we were talking about, there's more we actually agree on than we disagree on. The issue coming in is, in my opinion, the Democrats have done some good things, but one, they don't promote the good things they do, and then they let people like Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin run everything. So that's what everybody sees, and stuff stops getting fixed. So my friend is more like, I've kind of had it with the system in a sense. What we're trying to actually do right now is start our own business. And we're putting down our business model as, it's not going to be a worker cooperative, but it's going to be kind of aligned with a worker cooperative, meaning as the business grows, so do the employees. Our plan is not to do like what current business models do is, okay, that's as much as you're going to get and then take everything at the top. We wrote up a contract for ourselves too that as the business grows, our compensation will never amount more than $300,000 a year if we make it to that point. But we're trying to get things set into place for us so we can show that this is what we want to do. This is how we want to make our area better. We want to show how we feel businesses should be run, with the employees being the most important thing. God, I know it was Ford at one point tried to do something for his employees, and the Supreme Court ended up ruling that his motive should not be the employees but the shareholders. I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about.
I don't know the exact instance, but that would not surprise me at all. The Supreme Court was like, no, you owe all of the monies to all of the shareholders. You can't be promoting your employees like this.
I did hear, I will try and look it up, or if somebody can post it in the comments. I do know that there was a pretty big landmark lawsuit in the 50s that shareholders sued a CEO for not prioritizing annual profits, and they won.
Yeah.
And so there's that legal precedent for that. Is that kind of what you're talking about, or is this something different?
Yeah. No, that's what I'm talking about. I believe it was Ford, though. I might be wrong.
I think you're right. That sounds familiar. But so I'm not sure if it was specifically prioritizing the employees, but yeah, definitely profit needs to absolutely come first. Sorry, I'm just trying to clarify, make sure that I got that right.
Well, there's a guy out in your way in Seattle who what was it? Is Dan something? It was from Gravity Payments. He talked about how he changed his business model, and when he went on Fox News and talked about it, they called him a socialist. They called him a communist. They said you're going to be the case study of why this fails. And the guy's business has grown like 6 times by the time since from what he done. He took a pay cut, and he said everybody's getting this amount starting off here, and his business has grown. It's doing fabulous compared to what it was when he first started.
Yeah, well, there are a number of really successful co-ops out there. Isn't Ben and Jerry's one?
Maybe
No.
I'm not 100%.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, I was just saying I'm not 100% sure. If I'm talking too much, just y'all can tell me to shut up. It's fine.
No,
I get a rambling sometimes.
no worries. I just want to dial in. So, let's recenter here. What was the specific thing that you wanted to engage with or ask about or talk about?
Well, the last time we talked, you told me to call back in about the whole Trump's tariffs. And
Right.
I was telling my friend who was telling me, oh, the country ran off tariffs at one point. And I told him, I was like, yeah. And that led to the Great Depression. It was like, started a trade war and everything just went to crap right after that.
So I haven't really engaged a lot in this arena, and I think this is why I wanted you to call in, because Tori, have you engaged in this conversation with people?
Not tariffs leading to the Great Depression specifically, but I'm very curious because we're setting things up very similarly to how things were set up right before the Great Depression, unfortunately. So I'm very curious to hear more about this.
Well, man, they deregulated a lot. There was a war. It was after World War One, I think, and so it was already just unstable across Europe, who was one of our major trading partners at the time. And we started throwing out tariffs, and they put tariffs in retaliatory, so nothing was moving. Everything went up for a short period of time, but with all the bets on Wall Street, everything just crashed. And for the long short of it, tariffs kind of were the final nail in that coffin, because there was no global movement of product, because everybody was trying to outcharge the next person, because the first person was trying to charge 50% on a tariff. Or I'm not going to say that was the exact number, but it was kind of the gist of it. Everybody was retaliatory.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Retaliatory.
The word for some reason.
No worries.
Yeah.
So Danny, you use some kind of ambiguous language here, and I just want to make sure we're cleared up. So can I repeat back what you said, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here?
Yep.
Okay, so it sounds like you're saying that before the Great Depression, there was a set of tariffs that were put in place on countries outside of the United States, making it more expensive to purchase goods from out of the U.S. to push American consumers to purchase American-made products, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that led to a short spike in economic growth, but then a severe decrease when American manufacturers were starting to realize that they can charge more for their goods because they were not in competition with companies outside of the United States, while at the same time, companies outside of the United States, who were getting charged high tariffs, were taking it out on the United States by saddling the consumer with the additional cost. It didn't cost those companies anything; it just cost Americans more to buy products that were made outside of the United States. And so, in that way, outside of the United States, retaliatory tariffs were put in place, which tanked our economy. You were talking about how competing companies were underbidding or overbidding each other. And so I guess for clarification, do you mean United States and non-United States companies, or do you mean within those groups, or does that sound about right?
So companies obviously don't do tariffs. It's the country that does it.
Right.
So other countries would raise tariffs on our products. The issue with tariffs coming in is even at that time, there was no one source manufacturing. Everybody kind of started getting like, oh, I'd get this from here, get that from there. And, it might work for a little bit, but if, say, we can't manufacture, the widget here, maybe we can manufacture a part of the widget in China. If you charge 50% tariff to China and that widget originally cost $1, well, now the company has to pay $1.50 to bring it here. And eventually it creates a supply shortage coming in, which leads to increased prices and job losses because the only thing the company cares about is a profit. Part of that too was companies don't just charge, if they're paying a 50% tariff, and they're not going to charge you just that 50 cent on that dollar they're doing. They're going to charge you 75 cents because they still want to make that extra profit. So now you're paying closer to $1.75 instead of $1.50.
Got it. Yeah. And then on top of that, I do just want to add, unless, Tori, do you have anything you wanted to add to that, or does that sound about right?
That tracks to what my knowledge is. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. The only thing that I would also add there is that the tariffs also motivated an additional costs. So an example was in 2019 there was a tariff that was put in place that increased how much it would cost to sell washing machines to American consumers from outside of the country. I forget exactly who the tariff was on, but specifically it was targeting washing machines. That company increased the price of washing machines, which is understandable, but then they also increased the price of dryers because they kind of go along. And so while dryers were not subject to tariffs, the increase in price was a good excuse to just bump the price on another thing that was unrelated. And so it just became a money-making thing for companies outside of the United States to American consumers. Loss. So anyway.
Yeah, Oh, sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Danny, was there anything specifically about that, or did you just want to bring that up and talk about it? Like, what's... Yeah.
Well, so the whole thing, I think it was South Korea and China that those tariffs were on. But in retaliation, what China did was they stopped buying U.S. pork and U.S. corn. So what ended up having to happen, Trump had to actually take any money that he was making on that tariff and say, here, farmers, don't lose your farm. But what ended up happening, though, was a lot of the mom-and-pop farmers still went out of business, but people like Chuck Grassley, who got the benefit from Trump, his farms were allowed to stay in business.
So
and
that
creates... Sorry.
No, that's okay. I want to try and make sure that we're as focused as we can, because I know that if we start expanding out, we're going to not get to any specific, topics or anything. But I have a question for the two of you. If somebody wants to bring this up and talk about tariffs, what do we say? Like, I had the benefit of being able to say, call next week. But not everybody's going to have that when they're talking to their friends, family, coworkers, or having an argument with somebody on Twitter. Or Blue Sky, or whatever the case is. Facebook, oh, for the love of God, don't do that on Facebook. But if you're in Facebook, and somebody's arguing about tariffs, how do you respond? Like, what information do you give? Is it even worth it anymore to have these conversations? Tori, why don't you go first? No pressure.
You can just say tariffs raise prices for you. Like, tariffs raise prices on us. That's just true. And it's simple, and it helps people understand that it's not, those costs aren't going to, like, they're not going to be paid by China. They're not going to be paid by American corporations. Like, there's no way. Like, those tariffs are price raises for us as consumers. And, there are multiple things that, like right now, that Trump is claiming he's going to put tariffs on, and it's like, while also claiming that he's gonna, like, he ran on this idea of reducing costs for like normal people, right? Like people like the three of us. And yet he wants to put tariffs on timber, which we use for the overwhelming majority of our housing in this country, coming in from Canada, and fruits and veggies coming in from Mexico, if I'm understanding this correctly. And so it's like our food and our housing are going to cost more, and that is somehow going to question mark, question mark, question mark benefit us. Like, it's very strange. And so if you're talking about these things, I would just say tariffs raise your prices. Like, tariffs are going to make things more expensive at the grocery store if they don't disappear them for months at a time entirely, because there are other markets in the world that countries can send their goods to. They don't have to send them here. They can send them to a country that doesn't have tariffs, right? And so that's how I argue against it. I know there are problems that they can, temporarily fix, but a tariff is the wrong tool most of the time.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
That's a hell of a lot more concise than what I tried and say, or say call next week. But I don't know. I appreciate that while we're giving stories, because stories are what really sinks in, the situation. There's no amount of anecdotes that you can pull out that are going to convince somebody who's bought the party line. And so when you get into the facts of it, I appreciate the straightforward approach. Danny, do you have anything to add?
I point, like I did with my friend and got him off the tariff stick, I pointed to history. I showed him in history what happened with the tariffs and why certain policies were put into place and why these policies are still needed, such as, I think it was 1938 minimum wage was put in too. But I'll point to him and say, look, this is what happened. This is why it was put into place. After these policies were put into place, you see the growth of the country economically and happiness-wise shoot to the sky. It goes up. Once everybody starts doing better, we all do better. And I just point to history. I can show you in history where we've done these things and they have not worked. They just cause more harm to everybody. And it weakens the American negotiating position, because we're the person out here now sticking a wrench in the clog. Well, everybody's going to hurt because of that. And it makes us weaker in the negotiating position because everybody's hurting. And they can all point back and say, you're the one that did this. You're the one that started this.
Fair enough.
And now we're all being harmed by it. And
all right.
you might disagree or agree with me on this. Most policies of U.S. presidents, though,
Danny,
we don't see it while they're the president.
Agreed. And I think that would lead into a different call and another conversation. But I think that we're going to wrap things up for today, for this call.
Okay.
We've got some other callers on the line. I want to make sure that we get to them. But I'm really glad that you called in. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate y'all letting me get stuff off my chest.
Appreciate you. All right, take care. Okay. Yeah, so Seven Mountains mandate to tariffs. I have to, before we take this next call, I was trying to shoehorn something in and it didn't get anywhere. And I do just want to ask really quickly. Co-ops, businesses where employees all are part owners in that business, and that when the business does well, all of the employees do well. We see that here in the United States, and that is workers owning the means of production. And that is an example of how, like, communist philosophy and different kind of socialist goals are not necessarily incompatible with capitalism, and how communism, while it is about workers, is still based within a capitalist framework. And so with that said, unless you have a disagreement, I want to hop into a call with somebody who probably disagrees.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. John in Canada, you're live.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
Doing good. All right. You called in this week, so let's set the stage here. John, we were talking about communism, socialism. Last week, you called in and said that, if I'm remembering right, that it was a slippery slope. Communism equals bad. Communism and socialism are about the same thing, and all of it is bad, and we shouldn't do it. I don't want to misconstrue, so I want to give you the opportunity. What did you take away from that call, or what's going on?
Well, you're right. I did call to say that. However, you told me that communism and socialism don't mean the same thing, and then I didn't understand. Then we got into an argument. Then I withdrew, and we wished each other a Happy New Year.
Okay, cool.
And,
So then we're on the same page. Do you remember last week when I said that if you could speak a little louder into the phone, it would be helpful?
Can you hear me now?
Much better. Tori, can you hear John a little better?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what was going on last week? What about communism and socialism is bad, and why have this conversation? Like, what are you on about here, John?
Okay. Well, yes. Last week I heard you speaking. I also heard you this morning saying that how you say that communism or socialism, which I'm still not sure about the same thing, but that's not beside the point, were good things, and that the United States should adopt them, and that capitalism is a bad thing. However, I just wanted to point out that the very country you're living in was based on capitalism, and all the countries that have been socialist have failed, especially the Soviet Union, which was the biggest communist state in the world from 1950 to the 1980s, and they lost the war in 1991.
Tori, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I'd like to speak with Tori.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, yeah, I guess depending on like what definitions we're using, if we're using academic definitions, and like Scandinavian countries would fall under the umbrella of socialism, just as an example. And I think that you can also have like socialist programs under a capitalist sort of umbrella. So there's lots of different ways to look at things. So I do think that like being careful with our language is really kind of important, making sure that we mean the same things when we're using the same words. But yeah, I want to hear what you have to say. Go on.
Okay. So, here's the danger here's why I believe the danger of socialism or communism. Under communism, the people own the means of production. However, the people means the government. If the government owns the means of production, that means they also make the profit. So if they make the profit...
Hold on a second.
What's prevent them from...
John, hold on.
Can you hear me?
I can. So you said something. You said that the people owning the means of production means the government.
Yeah.
Tori, is that what that means?
Well, it's not supposed to mean that.
So when
I think that it's hard because I think that this is really hard because we have theory and then we have practice, and then we have to also think about ways that these systems get corrupted, right? So there's a lot of levels here.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Well, so that's not what you're afraid of, John. No, stop. Hold on. Don't lie. You said that they were the same thing, and you said, and I'm taking you at your word, that you think by the people you mean the government. You equated those as the same thing. So are you equating those as the same thing, or are you afraid that it's going to eventually lead to that? Which one is it?
The government, okay, was elected by the people, correct? But as you and I both know,
but the people owning the means of production, do you think that means the government, or do you think that means something else?
It means the government.
Okay, it does not mean the government, John.
What do you mean it doesn't mean the government?
It doesn't mean the government. Okay, so I want to be super clear here, and Tori, please jump in at any point. But I'm going to preface this by saying that I don't like Marx, and I don't like communism. I'm not a fan. And I can still argue that you're absolutely wrong in the most simple ways. And so I just want to be super clear here that me correcting you doesn't mean that I want to adopt communism. It just means that you're so wrong. You need to be corrected before you say this in front of people. I want to save you from yourself here, John. So, have you read Marx at all? Like, Communist Manifesto is not that big. Have you read it?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, so then do you know the difference between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat?
No, I don't know anything about that.
Okay, then you didn't read it. That's
know.
okay. And all you got to do is say I don't know, and that's fine. But let's go into that, right? So what you have is you had a class system. You had the owning class, the wealthy people. That was the bourgeoisie, the people who were disconnected from the rest of the world. The proletariat was the working class, the people who were putting in all of the work to not get very much back, right? People who were barely living hand to mouth. And you know what? That kind of sounds similar to nowadays, doesn't it? But regardless, let's put that aside. Let's talk about the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. Marx thought that eventually the working class would rise up and take over and overthrow the bourgeoisie. Personally, I think that's stupid. It's just creating a new bourgeoisie. But regardless, that was the idea. People owning the means of production didn't mean the government. It meant that the people who were doing the work for a company, right? If a company makes $10 billion in profit, then that $10 billion is going to get split up to the business and to the employees. And it's not going to get pocketed 80% by CEOs. It's going to be owned by those people. And that's why I brought up co-ops here in the United States, because co-ops are owned by the employees, right? That is the employees owning the means of production. That's not the government, John. That is a perfect example of how what you are saying makes no logical sense. And so please, can you repeat back to me? Do you think still that the people owning the means of production is the government? Or do you now understand that that is a stupid thing to say?
I now understand that I was incorrect.
Cool.
However,
okay, now we can correct you on socialism. Cool.
Well, can I speak?
Oh,
Can I
yeah,
say
go ahead.
something, or- okay, this has to be a conversation.
It does, you're
But
right.
tell me, but tell me, how is what you just described? How is it beneficial? How does it help the average guy? Because even if you do what you say, there's still going to be poor people.
Tori, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that when you take out the equation of all of the workers are doing the work and they're getting this little piece of the pie, let's just make up a number and say it's like 20%, like Eric said, and then 80% of the wealth or capital that's produced by the workers goes up to the CEO, the shareholders, other people, the bribes, the government, whoever's at the top, right? So if you take that 80% and you distribute it only to the workers, that's a huge increase and net positive for your standard of living, for example, right? So if you're not having to send all of that money out to people who invested in the company, or even if you're sending less of it, right? If you want to, like, we can get into the weeds about, like, maybe we split it up a different way, right? And so, but you're still giving more of the money, more of the wealth that's being produced back to the workers. Or again, if the workers, like we were talking about with co-ops, actually do own the means of production, the wealth just stays with them. It doesn't have to filter up and down and all around and get taken out and extracted and sent to other communities that already have more money, right? It can just stay with the workers. And that's a net positive because that's higher income, higher quality of life, right? Less stress. Those are all net positives for workers.
But hold on a second. I just want to make sure that I'm getting John right here. But Tori, there's still going to be poor people, even if that's the case. So why care? Why does it matter?
Yeah, there are going to be people who can't necessarily contribute into the system in a productive, air quotes, way. I mean that in the capitalist term of productivity, just to be clear. I'm not trying to dehumanize anybody, right? So yeah, there will always be people who require a safety net. That is true.
Okay, so why?
Okay,
So why care? If there's still going to be poor people, then why try your way? Why not just give 80% to the CEOs?
Because people have value. I think.
I do too. So
But-
John,
but-
do you
but-
think that making life
but
better for
Eric,
people
but Eric,
is worth
Tori,
it?
Eric, Tori, how's that any different than capitalism? What you just described? How's it any different than capitalism?
It's not, John.
Then why argue for a change if it's the same thing?
John, see, and this is why I said, right, that they are not incompatible. Communism.
So why the argument?
Well, I brought it up because what you said was so absolutely ridiculous that correcting you is going to help everyone involved, especially if people say the things that you said. We need to correct the record here. So I'm not a communist. So why do you think it should be the case? I don't. I'm just telling you you're wrong, like conceptually. But so when I say they're not incompatible, I mean they both can be existing at the same time in the same place, right?
Really?
So yes,
can.
that is a communist philosophy of the workers owning the means of production that is absolutely based in capitalism.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't socialism like the idea is that, let's say someone does a job or someone doesn't work, and then someone comes along, be it the government, says, I'm going to take a percentage of your paycheck, your earnings. Well, let's say someone has a business and says, I'm going to take a percentage, I'm going to give it to these people because they need it, and the person had nothing to do with the work that you did or the business you have. For instance, the very show that you're on, what if you're getting a salary, would you like it if someone came and said, okay, I'm going to take a portion of your salary and then give it to me, even though I had nothing to do with it. I never once stepped foot in your studio. I didn't contribute in any way, shape, or form, but I'm going to get a percentage every month because I need it.
So
does that seem fair for you?
I love that we've moved away from communism. I'm glad we can put that away and decide that, you know what, you fully get that what you were saying was crazy. Tori, you look like you are ready to burst. Hit us. Talk to me. What's up?
Well, I mean, it depends on which direction it's going, right? So with the capitalist system that we have now, where there's no checks or limits, or the laws of physics don't apply, we can just exploit the earth forever. That money that you're talking about, that you're saying, like somebody's coming in and saying, hey, that this money or wealth or capital that you've produced, I'm just going to take some of that because I want it, right? And I'm going to give it to the poor people. Like, yes, I would actually prefer that somebody come in and say, hey, all this that you've produced, I'm going to give it to people who aren't able to work, who aren't able to be productive at the same level, as opposed to what's happening now, whereas somebody's coming in and saying, hey, all of this wealth that you've produced, I'm going to take it and give it to the shareholders and the CEO and the board. Right. So like, to me, if we're going to take the money away, like the wealth that's been created, and just hand it out to people, I want it to go to people who are disabled. I want it to go to moms or parents who need, to go on parental leave. I want it to go to kids' education. I don't want it going to the people at the top. So the way that it's being extracted now is it's going up, right? And I would like it, if we're going to do the extraction thing, I would like it to go down, right? Because like the trickle down isn't working. Well, we're seeing that.
It sounds like John is saying that the extraction itself is the problem.
That's how you feel? I just gave you an example. You would actually be okay with someone coming in and taking your salary and giving it to someone who had nothing to do with it. So which means, in other words, you have no problem with supporting a guy who's sitting in his mom's basement eating food and says, I don't need to work because I'm getting money from Eric and Tori. That means I don't have to work, which means that leads to more unemployed people, more poor people. And plus, and you're supporting some lady who's probably having lots of children who won't refuse to get a job because she knows she's getting money from you. I know you don't really believe that. I know you two are very smart. I know you don't really believe that.
So Tori, this is definitely a little more 101. I think we're going to need to probably go a little bit into what social contract theory is. And
oh, okay, sure, let's do it.
Right? Like, I don't know. What do you think? That kind of feels like we kind of need to get that basic. What do you think?
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
Okay,
let's
cool.
do it.
Cool. So, John, have you heard of social contract theory?
No, never.
Cool. So the idea is you're born into a society and you recognize that you live in a place with other people, right? And because of that...
That's what society means.
Yes. Thank you. Good. And we establish a lot of things in order for that society to happen. We agree on laws and we all put in to make that society a little bit better. Like taxation is what you're arguing about, and when you're talking about distribution of those taxes, that is separate. So let's separate those things, right? Should we pay taxes? I think that there are a lot of public services that I would love to continue to have. Those public services are funded by money getting taken out of your paycheck. Things like roads, police departments, which I'm totally okay now. But fire. Hold on a second. Hold on. No, John. But you were having an argue. You were arguing about money getting taken out of your paycheck. I'm listening to you and I'm engaging with you on these levels here. So, do you have a problem with taxes as a concept, or do you just have a problem with where the tax money goes?
I have a problem with tax money goes.
Okay, but you're okay with money getting taken out of your salary.
Let me finish. If it goes to hospitals, roads, stuff like that, that's okay. That's where it should go. But I'm talking about, I don't know, let's say someone wants to just live. Like, they don't want to work. They just want to sit down and live off your money, my money. That I'm against.
I definitely get the welfare queen thing that you're painting, for sure. I just want to make sure that you don't go back to the whole taking money out of your salary. You're okay with money getting taken out of your salary. You're just not okay with where that money goes, right?
As long as it's for the public good, not just for some guy.
What if it's okay? So we've got that. We're feeling good. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's talk about welfare. Yeah.
Well, welfare was designed to help women who or widows who are during World War II whose husbands were away at war. It was only supposed to be a temporary thing. It wasn't meant to be something permanent for you to live on. Do you agree that people should work to earn their own living? Do you agree with that, Eric and Tori? Do you agree that people should work to make their own living? Do you agree?
I would quibble with the word should because not everyone can.
I agree with that, but if someone can, they should, correct?
I mean, some people should contribute in some way. Not everybody can work, I think, in the way that you're conceptualizing it. But everyone should try to contribute if they are able. Sure, I'll give you that.
Well, what I'm worried about is some guy who can but won't because he knows he's going to get welfare. I know you don't want
that. But I guess the way that, so in the U.S. at least, welfare kind of doesn't rank in terms of where our budget goes. Right. And so we have our massive budget. We have our military that's big enough to fight God. And welfare is just not, we have been cutting it and cutting it and cutting it as much as possible. But also we haven't been meeting other basic needs, right? Because for example, you don't like the guy sitting in his basement. Okay, sure, that's fair. Somebody who is able and has somebody who has the ability to work and is simply choosing not to and doesn't have any health concerns, mental health crises that they're trying to navigate, etc. Okay, sure. Let's say that guy should be working. That's fine. That's fine if you want to say that. I think that everybody should contribute to the extent of their ability. Not to go all Marx on you or whatever, but I think that that guy is not where the money is being given, right? That guy getting $1,000 a month is that's not even a drop in the bucket for us, right? We have billions and billions of dollars going to police. We have billions and billions, maybe trillions of dollars going to shareholders and CEOs and the top 1%. And then but while that's happening, our basic needs aren't being met, right? So that guy in the basement, he always will need a place to live, regardless of whether or not he's contributing. If he doesn't have a place to live, he's not going to be able to, in our country at least, very rarely is that person going to be able to even get a job. And so people have basic needs that need to be met before they can go out and be doing the things that we're demanding of them, right? You have to have a safe place to live. You have to have food and clean water, right? In our society nowadays, in order to get a job, you have to have access to the internet. So there are all of these things that we're not funding really. And I think that my disabled neighbor who's getting however much disability is in this country, $850 or something ridiculous, not enough to live off of at all, right? The little snippets of welfare that we are giving to people, again, like just doesn't rank in terms of like where our money is going. And so for me, I'm going to look at like the bigger picture, and I'll deal with the guy in his mom's basement some other day, right? Because he's not the one who is pulling the strings. He's not the one who's engaging in massive amounts of corruption. Like there are much bigger things that we need to deal with in the US, at least. I'm not going to speak for Canada. I know y'all have your own issues, and that's just how it goes. Living in a country, in a society, is that there's issues to work out. But I'm not going to like go after the guy in the basement or the mom who has a bunch of kids, because a few $100 a month is just that's nothing. That's negligible. That's not going to negatively impact me in any way, shape, or form when I'm having to pay, 72%, I'm exaggerating, of my taxes to the military and the cops, if that makes sense. So to me, I'm like, I want to look at the bigger picture of like, let's reduce harm from the top down and not the bottom up.
What you're facilitating is laziness, because it's the guy's responsibility to get his basic stuff. Plus,
sure, that's fine, and I'm fine facilitating laziness as long as like we're dealing with corruption, right? Like we have legalized corruption in our country with lobbying.
Because
I understand that's not your point. I'm just saying, like, in terms of harm reduction, we have to deal with the biggest things first. That's how accountability works, is the people with the most power need to be held accountable first. And the dude in his mom's basement and the mom with a bunch of kids, they get held accountable last. So prioritizing where we're going to be looking at holding people accountable, it needs to be politicians. It needs to be the military and the police. Right? It needs to be people who get massive government contracts.
I don't know why you're criticizing these organizations. It's the military that protects you. It's the police that you call when you're in trouble. And
the police don't do very much in our country, but go on. Just statistically, I mean, looking at their own numbers, they don't solve very many crimes. But continue. I get what you're saying.
Who are you going to call when you're in trouble? But that's not the point. Under capitalism, businesses are formed, delayed with the mom, instead of waiting for a paycheck, she can get a job and earn her pay stub and lift herself out of poverty. Isn't that preferable than her sitting
That's not possible in this country because
yes,
daycare costs more than minimum wage. So no, for moms with a bunch of little kids at home, she can't do that. That's the math just doesn't work out in that way. But we can talk about another example if you'd like.
If you give her the money, she's not going to get a job because she knows she won't have to.
That's not true. The data says the exact opposite. But
and that's not what Tori said.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's not what Tori said. Can you repeat back what Tori said?
She said that the mom can't make minimum wage, therefore she can't get a job.
No, what Tori said was that daycare costs more than minimum wage. If someone were to get a minimum wage job and have kids, they will actually be losing more money than they're making.
Well, how is the person saying about getting the money from the government are going to help them, because they won't have the incentive.
That's okay. So that's an interesting idea, that people need to be incentivized through hunger and through suffering in order to work, right? Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
So in case you haven't noticed, Eric, but we humans, we're selfish creatures. We're not altruistic.
Yes, we are.
No. Hold on. Can I jump in here really quickly?
Do. Tori, you don't need to ask.
Humans are okay. I would say like humans can be very selfish. That's true. But we evolved in community. We evolved having to depend on one another, right? And so we evolved in our little tribes or groups or whatever language we're using right now. Because we have too many needs to meet them on our own without a lot of infrastructure. And so for hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived in these little pods or groups, right? That had to work together, that had to collaborate in order to survive. Because food, shelter, medicine, clean water, caring for small children, that's not something that you could just like find your little cave wife and go as a little caveman and get your little cave house and have your little cave babies, and the two of you together could do all of those things by you. That's not possible, right? So we had to live in groups. We had to depend on one another, and that is how we evolved, right? So we have been taught via capitalism or propaganda, I guess I should say, that like we're all inherently selfish, we're all in it for ourselves. But like you actually, that's something you have to teach kids. Like kids don't come out into the world like believing that. So we do actually have to depend on one another. Historically, that is what we've had to do, right? So like the selfishness idea of I got mine, so you can get fucked. Like that's not true. That's not backed up by science. That's not backed up by evolution. There's no real data to support that. Humans had to depend on one another in order to survive. And it actually worked out great because like the kid who was in his mom's cave basement, somebody in the community would go up to him and be like, yo, we need help. We're doing this hunt today, or we need you to go and like gather berries, or we need you to stay close to the kids so that like if someone needs help, there's someone that they can call, right? There was some accountability there on a community level, which is great. And also for people who couldn't contribute, for children, for people who are disabled, for the elderly, for moms who were recovering from childbirth, those people also had like support systems, right? So they weren't just like trying to rough it out there making minimum wage. And so I just want to be clear that like the idea that humans are inherently selfish, like we do have some selfishness, sure, that's but I think that is something that you can foster, which I think capitalism does intentionally, or you can teach people better ways to engage with the world, right? We can practice interdependence. We don't only have to practice independence. And like try this idea of like, we'll screw everybody else as long as my needs are met. It's fine. Because again, that's just not how humans evolved. And so I want to be really clear that like, I don't subscribe to that argument of like humans are inherently selfish and fighting one another for like the scraps. And we're all just going to like kill each other off. And someday like some billionaire will be sitting on a pile of bones with no one to bring him a sandwich. Just to be clear.
You know, my young son, when he was an infant, he saw something that I had. He told me to close my eyes, and he took it. And he was less than 5, and he knew exactly what he was doing. And humans have a tendency to take each other's lands from the very beginning of time. Read your history books. That means that humans are naturally selfish. And if you really believe in the kindness of humanity, why not trust the capitalists that you hate so much to do the right thing? If you really believe that humans are altruistic.
So John, the capitalist that you hate so much is a weird thing to throw out there. You didn't ask us if we like capitalists or hate them. You're making assumptions. So chill on the assumptions, make your point, and then ask us before you throw that kind of shit out.
Okay, I'm going to ask you right now. Are you against capitalism?
No.
Why not?
Oh, great question. Okay, cool. So guess what? All of the things that you're arguing against can work with capitalism too. I don't like capitalism, but here we are, right? Here we are. So what are we going to do to make sure that everybody is at least okay? Well, I think that first of all, you have this incredibly toxic idea of the welfare queen. Have you been poor, John?
Let me tell you.
No. It's real basic, really quick, because I don't know if you've been poor before. Have you been poor?
Let me tell you something. When you're poor, you do what you have to do.
No. You do not get to fucking throw out the generic shit. Have you been poor? Yes or no?
When you're in a bad situation, you can either give.
When you're in a bad situation, I don't care about other people's bad situations. I care about your situation. John, have you been poor before?
I'm not rich, if that's what you're thinking.
No, I'm not asking about rich. I'm asking about poor. Let me give you an example, right? So growing up, there are times when meat was an absolute luxury. And when you had a meal that had meat in it, it was wonderful, right? That there are families still today, right? There are so many families out there that are barely able to live hand to mouth, right? Able to get whatever they can. And the idea of something other than beans and rice every single day is a luxury. Now, let me tell you what it's like for people who live in poverty, right? Who don't know if they're going to have somewhere to live next month because they don't know if they're going to have a roof over their head, who don't have the nutrients in their body to be healthy. And so they're sick all of the time. For those people who are actually taking advantage of the systems in place to try and help them, right? Social security, welfare systems, it is, number one, purposefully built for those people to suffer. They don't get more than they need. They don't get as much as they need to survive. It is meant to make those people suffer, and it is put in place so those people can feel shame every day. People who stand in lines to get their welfare, their SNAP benefits, or whatever the case is, right? Using their coupons at the cash register so that they can be looked down on by their neighbors, by the people who are ringing them up, right? You don't get to have nice things. You get to have the government block of cheese, right? You don't get to you don't get steak, and you get mac and cheese in little blue boxes. You know what? That is fucking awesome. But like, regardless, it's not healthy, right? The idea that somebody goes, oh, well, you know what? The government's just going to take care of me. I'm going to be fine. I don't need to get work because somebody else's taxes are going to take care of me is an assumption that you're making that's built on this idea that it is filled with shame, hunger, with illness and insecurity. It is filled with fear. That you're not going to be able to feed yourself or your family, or you're not going to have a roof over your head, right? The idea that somebody would willingly take all that on, but I don't have to work, that's so wonderful, is so pie in the sky ridiculous that I really don't think that you have a concept of what poverty means, because poverty is not that. Poverty is not people signing up for welfare because it's totes cool. No, it hurts. It sucks. I don't know, like, I asked if you've been poor, because the idea of the welfare queen that you're painting, that somebody's sitting on their ass just collecting government benefits, is so outside of my lived experience that it feels alien. It feels alien to me. Maybe it's different in Canada. Is it different in Canada? Probably, right? You guys have you guys at least have socialized healthcare, which is something we don't have. But yeah, no.
Okay, Park. I'm going to answer your question. No, I've never been poor, but let me tell you something.
Okay.
A long time ago, there was a woman who was so poor she couldn't afford the basic milk necessities, and she had a young daughter to take care of. And she was so depressed she even considered suicide. You know what she did? She sat down, took a pen to paper, she wrote a novel. She took it to 12 different publishers. They all got rejected. 13 publishers said, we'll publish it. That book was published. It was a huge hit.
Oh, wow.
We're not talking about the Queen Turfari.
That's the person.
Tori?
The person was called J.K. Rowling.
Tori,
She's
please.
now worth billions of dollars.
Tori?
That's capitalism right there, baby.
Tori,
She
please.
lifted herself up.
Okay. Okay. Yes, that is a thing that happened. That is actually a true story.
Someone that you
Let Tori respond.
But what to me, I'm like, what about the other tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of moms in the UK that were in the exact same position as J.K. Rowling, whose names we don't know because they also exist and are not billionaires today. I
guarantee you, she's now in a position to employ them. There you go. She's now in a position to employ them and left them out of
she's
poverty.
not employing them though. That's lovely that she could do that, but she's not. She's not going
and
to.
They don't have to be billionaires. They just need to get jobs. That's all they need to do is get
No, John.
She didn't get a job. She wrote a book.
She did. She became
That's not a job.
That was her job. That was her job.
No, it's not.
Well,
You don't get paid for
woman-
writing children's books and pitching them. That's
Yes,
not
you
it.
do.
That doesn't pay anything.
The woman's worth billions of dollars.
I understand that.
Like,
Again,
John,
she didn't go get a job.
No, and you do realize that most authors don't make that much money, right?
Most
But-
authors sell less than 1,000 books.
I
But even like I feel like even that is getting like off in the weeds. John,
Yeah, exactly.
John, let's pointing out that somebody became a billionaire. Oh, that's wonderful. Should we expect that should be the case for everyone? And then fuck them if they don't do it. Fuck them. Let them fucking starve in the street. Let their teeth fall out of their fucking heads. Should we do that? Should that be our policy for the rest of the world? That everybody else should fucking suffer unless they write a $1 billion fucking book deal, series?
I'm not saying anyone should write $1 billion book.
No. Hold on. You absolutely focused on the wrong part of that. The fuck 'em part is the part that I'm concerned about. Should we absolutely say screw everybody else unless they do something and become incredibly successful? Let their teeth fall out of their fucking heads.
here's my position. I say, let the person help the person find their own way. There's an old saying: if you teach someone how to fish, you feed them for life. If you give someone a fish, you feed them for a day. I'd rather teach the person how to fish.
John, that is the human equivalent of posting minion memes. I really don't. So, John.
Yes, I'm listening.
We're talking big picture, and big picture is more people fail than succeed. More businesses fail than make it. More books don't make any money than are successful. Most of the time, that's just not the case. And there are some circumstances where no matter how hard you try, the system is going to leave you in a bad situation. Example, there are people who are taking care of family, right? Maybe a parent is ill and you're going to spend the next 5 years in end-of-life care for a parent. Or a sibling is either, disabled in some way or whatever, needs a caregiver, right? And those caregivers often are in extreme poverty. So they can say, hey, screw my parents, screw my sibling. I'm going to do whatever I can to try and make ends meet. But the fact is they're not able to both take care of their loved one and become a billionaire author. So what do we do about them? Do we show them how to fish, John? Or do we at least make sure that, they're able to take care of their family members?
Okay, if maybe we can help them take care of their family members.
No, hold on. That's socialism, John. So maybe to some degree you're okay with socialism, just not to the degree that you're painting, right? Can we say that some socialism is okay?
I don't want people who can't work.
No. That's great, but I'm just I want to see if we have some common ground now. Is some socialism okay?
No, tell me, Eric. How did
No. Is some socialism okay?
How did you?
We're not going to move forward until you answer me. Is some socialism okay?
No, because...
No? Okay, so what do we do about the caregivers?
What?
What do we do about caregivers, people who are taking care of family members in hospice? What
I really don't understand is if you care so much, why don't you devote your entire salary to them? The salary you're making off the...
That's a great way to deflect the question. Why don't you answer mine first? Right? What do we do about caregivers?
What do we do about caregivers?
Yes.
We employ them. Give them a job.
Okay, I'm glad. Why don't you go and fucking find jobs for everybody?
If I could, I would.
Okay, what have you done for it this week?
What?
You know what? John is actually going to single-handedly take care of all of the welfare issues. So, I'm sorry. Let me go to John. You got me riled up here. So let's go to caregivers, right? People who are spending most of their time caring for a family member or a spouse, a loved one of some kind, right? Let's say you're taking care of a parent with dementia. They need 24/7 care, or they're going to wander out into the street. When are they going to find time to work?
That's a good question.
Oh, okay. So should we do anything to help them?
So you're suggesting that we give them some money for socialism? That's what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Okay. And for how long should we do this?
Well, as long as it's needed, right?
Okay, but there's one scenario we have to take into consideration.
No, you can bring up the extra scenarios afterward, but what about just the general scenario, right? Someone is in need because they're taking care of a family member.
In that extreme case...
It's not an extreme case. It happens all the time, every day, everywhere.
And there's millions of Americans who are caring for family members right now, so it's not that extreme.
No.
Well, if you're expecting me to say something like kill them all, I disagree with that.
I don't think you're going to say that. I think you have a bigger heart than you think. You just have this idea that has demonized poor people, and I think that we need to break that down because there are real reasons why people can be impoverished. And we need to have some fucking empathy.
Okay, but here's the scenario, Mr. Murphy. How do you explain the fact that every single...
How do I explain the fact? I feel like John's not getting... Hold on, John.
Including the Soviet Union.
Yeah. That. Oh, okay. The Soviet Union has failed. I'm glad you're not taking anything into account. We're in a conversation, John. If you wanted to bring that up, you could brought up that at the beginning. You can call in next beginning of next month, and we can pick that up. But right now we're in socialism, so let's stay there. Okay. So, is some socialism okay?
Only under the most extreme circumstances.
Only in the most extreme circumstances. What about people who are on permanent disability?
Excuse me?
Permanent disability.
Well, it depends.
It depends on
Let
what?
me tell you something. But let me tell you something.
No, don't tell me something. Answer me. What does it depend on?
And then we moved up.
No, John, what does it depend on?
What?
What does it depend on?
Whether or not the person's honest and whether or not the person has no cure. I don't want fraudsters, and I know you don't want.
So should we assume that everyone is a liar, or should we assume that people who say they're in need are in need?
You're giving humanity too much credit.
Should we assume everyone is a liar, or should we assume that people who say that they're in need are in need?
There are liars out there.
I didn't ask if there are liars out there, John. Should we assume that everybody who says they need help is a liar, or should we assume that people who say that they are in need are in need?
We should go by case basis.
John, I'm not asking you case by case basis. I'm asking you the general assumption. If somebody says that they are in need, do you assume that they are a liar and say no? Or do you help them and then find out the details?
We investigate.
You investigate. Do you know how long it takes to get benefits in the United States?
How long does it take, Mr. Eric?
Months. Months. There are not enough people to go through it. There are not enough caseworkers for the amount of social programs that, like, number one, there's not enough money. Number two, there are not enough people to handle it, even if there was enough money. So practically, what you're saying makes absolutely no sense. But let's just pretend that we lived in a perfect world where there were enough social workers and there was enough money to go around, right? Just pretend we'll be there for just a second, right? Should we assume that people are lying and say no to everyone until they can prove it to us? Or should we help people and then take a look at the details? If I say, hey, John, I'm going to be homeless tonight. I'm going to be homeless tonight. There's a big pot of money everybody put into to be able to help others, right? I would like some of that money, please. Would you say, Eric, you're a liar. I'm going to find out about it next month. Or are you going to help me now?
Okay, I know you two are going to disagree with me and laugh at me at this by saying this, but I say we do the investigation.
Okay, and those people do not deserve any help otherwise.
Only if they really deserve it. I don't want
John?
to give money to someone who's a fraudster.
John?
Have a nice day, Eric. I love you too. Have a nice day.
Tori, is there anything you want to say?
Well, I would like to say that we spend more money investigating fraud in the social welfare system than there is fraud being done by people who participate in, or people who are the beneficiaries of those systems, right? So we actually are wasting money doing the research to make sure people aren't cheating. We're wasting time, money, resources, those individuals, the caseworkers, we're wasting like what they could be doing with their time instead of investigating like fraud in the system. So they're actually, we've done the work on this and we know there's not that much fraud. I think what was really interesting was that like when you're talking about socialism and communism, it can get really confusing, right? But like the specific things that John was worried about, those specific scenarios, we have decades. I was going to say centuries. We don't have centuries. We have decades of data on how prevalent those problems are, and they are not very prevalent, right? I think it's really interesting that like the callbacks to like Reagan's weird lies that he told about people who were beneficiaries of welfare, Social Security, Medicaid, whatever systems were in place.
John's Canadian too.
I do think it's really well, yeah, but Ronald Reagan was a consummate liar when it came to those conversations, and he would make stuff up like in a split second because he was an actor. He was good at that. But like we still are having to debunk these things 40 years later. We're still having to debunk like a lot of the stuff he just made up on the spot in like random interviews. Because he would just make things up and pull them out of thin air. But yeah. So I mean, yeah, I think that there's these specific scenarios that John was concerned about.
Yeah.
We have a lot of data that will diminish his concerns considerably by at least 90%.
Right.
I would say.
I don't want to leave the topic just because John is gone, and I'm glad you're responding to it. I think that people find themselves so far already into the conversation, we make assumptions that everyone is already there. We make assumptions that everyone has already disentangled themselves from the idea of the welfare queen. People have already disentangled themselves from this idea that, government inefficiency is because of money spent on the poor, and assumptions about people in poverty, right? We're operating, you and I, when we talk, we already have these assumptions. Everyone's already there. And now we're having a deeper conversation. And I feel like John is a great example of the fact that that's not the case. And if we don't address that, John's never going to join us in the 201 conversation. He's never going to he's never going to progress, because no one's ever going to respond to John, because everyone's going to go, wow, you are a human minion fucking meme on Facebook. Move on, and John is going to be none the wiser. And the fact is that we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people in the atheist space. I'm going to say two things that are going to piss off a lot of people. Number one, there are a lot of people in the atheist space who have deconverted from religion, but have not deconverted from their wacky conservative views. And because of that, we have some really, really fucking wacky atheist skeptics who just have assumptions about poor people that are based in fucking evil. That's why I think doing this at least once a month is important. Because if we're not meeting them and talking about it, how are they ever going to move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. I think that's really fair. And it's something that I sometimes forget, because it's like, well, I've talked about this. It's like people are bored with it, right? Even though I love talking about these kinds of things, right? Yeah, I think you're right on the money, honestly, because there are still these like myths and lies that exist where people are deeply concerned about like a mom on welfare and receiving benefits, and it's like, I'm sorry, but like, again, $856 is not, it doesn't matter, man. And it's like you multiply that across all the people who are committing all the fraud in all of the systems, and it's literally negligible. So it's really like focusing your concern and your ire on the wrong people, and like that's why I'm always like, you got to look at this is like the whole thing about power dynamics, right? Is it's like you got to look at the system and find out like who has power in these systems. I'm sorry, it's even a mom who is cheating and taking twice as many benefits and is, I don't know, getting $1,700 a month instead of $850 a month or whatever, like however she's like manipulating the system. Even that is like so negligible. And investigating it is going to cost more than like the little bit of extra that she's taking.
Yeah, I and that doesn't even get into I feel like people don't have context. They hear $850 a month and they multiply that by everybody.
I made that up. But just to be clear, that's not a real number.
Let's bump it to $2,000. $2,000 a month. Multiply that by everybody. That's a really big number. But they don't compare that to social corporate welfare. They don't have a context for comparing that to, like you said, military spending. Right? And because of that, it's a big number. I mean, it is exactly that old ass fucking political cartoon of the wealthy fat cat with all the cake and leaving the two poor people to fight over the one slice. It's exactly it. It's one calling the other person, it's and then we need to have an entire other conversation about whether or not people deserve well-being and whether or not they need to prove that they should be deserving of well-being. But
Well, survival, really. I mean, I think that we think about in the US, we keep moving the goalposts. And so it's now we're at the point where it's like, well, housing is optional if you're not willing to work. And again, it's like if you're making a minimum wage, like what housing?
yeah,
You know, you have to be like sleeping on someone's couch or maybe living in a yurt or some sort of like temporary shelter, right?
yep.
Like,
And that's an entire other conversation too, is you used to be able to buy a house and support a family on a single income.
right.
And
It's like we just keep moving that goalpost further and further and further away and saying, you know, because like I remember that, like even when we were younger, it was like, well, you need to like work hard, get another job. If your job doesn't pay enough or whatever, like there's just all of these things, right? And it's like, oh, we'll get a roommate, and now it's like, oh, well, let's sleep in your car. Like these are things that people, like serious air quotes people, are actually saying. Is it's like, oh, well, if you can't afford an apartment, you know, it might be really good for you to just like sleep in your car for a little while.
yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, you're talking to people in Phoenix about sleeping in their cars? No.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
Absolutely fucking not.
Meanwhile, there's a guy last week who got pinned down by the police on the pavement for too long in Phoenix and received 3rd-degree burns. He literally cooked on the pavement while he was being arrested. Like, yeah, living in your car doing that heat is insane.
No, absolutely not. Right.
And that is making this generous assumption on our part that everybody isn't, like my example, caring for another person. You know,
Yeah.
we can, it's just, it's compounded so much that, yeah.
That was a great example, because I wasn't even thinking about that. I was really thinking of like the examples that John was using specifically, that weren't necessarily like based in reality in terms of if you're just looking at the numbers and like who should we be concerned about, like who's grifting in the system, like, but like the caregiving one is really that's huge, and we don't talk about that at all because it's a 24/7 job that, you know.
And let's not even get into the mental anguish that comes in with like end of life care for a parent. Jesus, like
Yeah.
we don't even want
Yeah.
to, but
Totally.
and all of that, I do just want to stir the pot a little bit. I know we're not going to have enough time, but I do also just want to say, throwing this out there, that Democrats are not as good at this as people say, and that I think that the system did not, like, political sides, Republican and Democrat in the United States, I think both of them are in the pockets of, you know, the mega corporations. And so
Yeah.
I don't think that either side is going to fix it because they're already bought and paid for. So it's not even a liberal Democrat thing, you know. It's a who should we be taking care of, and should we be buying, you know, Elon Musk another fucking island or whatever. We have so many callers, and we do not have enough time. And I know that I've asked you for a limited amount of time. I'm going to try and take them as many as we can.
Okay.
If you can go a little long, just let me know. If not, we'll cut it in 15 minutes.
Okay.
So just let me know. We had a caller, I'm really bummed, Lazar, who was calling from Serbia, who wanted to talk about awareness of politics in Serbia and how that's going. And I think that would have been a really awesome conversation. So Lazar, if you are watching, please call back at the first Monday of next month, because we would love to take you first. We'd love to spend time and really go into that with you. That said, I'm going to dive in, grab the Atheopagan. We've got a whole bunch of people, so we're not going to have too much time. But Atheopagan, how's it going?
Horrible. How are you?
My blood is up. How about you, Tori?
Yeah.
I'm doing okay.
Yeah, I was bouncing in my seat that whole time. Like I was like maybe Eric will bring me in as a social worker who works with people who are, struggling in New York City to get by day to day, even on benefits and working full time.
Well, and just as an aside, by the way, New York, just to drive the point home that I made right before we took your call, because I'm sorry, Tori, this is why I need you here, because I'm going to have too many of these. But people talk about, oh no, the Republicans won, and yet what is the political affiliation of the mayor of New York right now?
Oh, we're full commies over here. We got hammers and sickles out of every window.
And yet, New York is wanting to set up a special 911 hotline just for the CEOs so that they can get taken care of above everybody else because they get 911 platinum. That was a Democrat who put that in place. That was not a Republican. And so we talk about, oh, no, that's going to the Democrats, it's going to the Republicans. Everybody's fucking lining up to suck off the CEOs, and we're pretending like the political affiliation is going to fix it. I can't stand it. Sorry, you being in New York, I can't.
Yeah,
anyway,
we got screwed last election because it was a choice between this kind of I don't know if I should call him a fascist, but he was pretty close. The guardian angel dude with the red hats that patrol our streets trying to act all tough. And that was the Republican. And then we had this I don't know what to call him. He's like a conservative Christophile who has said some pretty wild, wacky religious stuff in the past. And that was our choice for mayor.
Yeah, and what a break in the system that y'all had to vote for that, but the want of the people in New York obviously doesn't line up that way. But
right.
You wanted to talk about something specifically. I know we have a limited time, and I'm taking away from your call by ranting at you. What did you want to talk about?
Son of a bitch.
Son of a bitch.
So I love talking about this because I am, and I know a lot of people who listen in and hear me talk have said a lot of these quotes a lot before, but we're going to do it again because we got a new host and she gets to deserve and get all my jokes out of the way. Okay, so, Tori,
yes.
I am an old school sockdem. I am a person who believes that my axiom is that the working class needs to have control over whatever systems that we have, whether it be capitalist or socialist or whatever. I do have a lot of fights with my more leftist brethren, and have made the joke several times that when the revolution happens and actually takes place and prospers, I'm probably going to be one of the first people on the wall. But besides that, I really like talking about leftist infighting because I find it to be kind of wild, the disagreements that we get into to the point where we're calling liberals Nazis, we're calling any sort of communist Marxist-Leninist because they might have a slightly weird take. And I think that, especially with the last election, on how much we were able to say, or a lot of our comrades were able to say, well, we can't vote for Kamala Harris because we don't like this, yes, very important policy decision, but we're willing to give up basically the country over to fascism because we disagree with her on this one thing. And I think that this thing is very wild. And although we are seeing some infighting with the conservatives right now with some immigration issues, I don't foresee them kicking people out of their movement because of it. Unlike our side, who, if you have a take that is disagreed with by a lot of people or some, you are immediately removed from any engagement. And I would like to hear your takes on that.
I definitely have some thoughts about like the infighting. I guess I haven't seen anyone being removed from engagement necessarily. And I'm not saying that that's not something that happens. Do you have an example of that off the top of your head?
Sorry, I was eating when you guys took my call. So yes, I would say that as much as we love making fun of libs, I would say that there are a lot of there are a lot of people who I will always go to. I will always go to streamers because they're probably the easiest way to point out this. There have been a few streamers who have engaged the Israel-Palestine question with a lot more nuance than just from the river to the sea. And you can disagree with that or agree with that as you wish. But once they came out with that argument, no matter what their other policy positions are, they could be as close to a pure light socialist as possible. And they would be basically said that they are Nazis, that they don't deserve a platform anymore. They just want an ethno state, like all the good shit. That sort of thing.
Okay.
Everybody's getting canceled. Sorry.
Well, oh boy. Yeah. I mean, I think that is rough. I think that you're right. I don't think, and I said this on my podcast after Trump won the election. It was like, I don't think anybody in Palestine is any safer because Trump won, even though Harris was, I think, pretty objectively awful on that issue and, took until the last day to say that she was going to do anything really meaningful besides, fight to stop the war or whatever. But yeah, I mean, this is a rough one, because I think that we all feel very strongly, and unlike people on the right, we don't just fall in line because it's like, oh, well, this is the team and we're on the right team, and so it's like whoever is in charge, we just need to go and follow them. I do think that because we have a Supreme Court that maybe we should think about falling in line a little bit more just on the president, because that is really terrifying that, it's like one dude can set the narrative for the country for many, many decades beyond when he's alive. So, again, this is me coming from having been raised Christian nationalist, right? And very explicitly Christian nationalist before that was a cool thing to be. And so, yeah, I mean, I do, man, I really struggle with this because, being in Portland, I am, I see a lot of this infighting sort of up close, and, there are a lot of conflicts that come up around, man, the Palestine-Israel situation for sure is rough, right? That it's we do sort of have this. How do we even have language around this? And it's just people kind of end up saying it's oh, well, if you say anything about X, Y, or Z, if we don't have this really kind of point blank end of discussion, this is what's going to happen. That it's we can't have a conversation anymore. And I think that as much as I absolutely am anti-apartheid, period. And I think that I think Israel, if South Africa and the United States can stop being apartheid states, I believe in Israel. I think that they can do it on paper.
Just as a joke, not joke. I'm in a lot of political Discord servers, and as soon as people found out that there was this one person that found out that I was a sock dem, and immediately launched into this tirade about basically I was being blamed for some sort of blood sin of the death of Rosa Luxemburg, and I was like, well, I don't know what you want me to do about that, bud.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I think that we feel things very strongly, and we have very strong moral compasses, and I think that these are all really good things. But if we can't work together on the super super basic issues, then I don't really know what power we can have politically.
And that's
right.
That's basically and I think that's a position as a SOCDEM that we. My number one job, if I was to get into any political sphere, would be to coalesce leftists and basically be the mediator, because that's what SOCDEMs have done historically, is allow, especially in political spheres, to give a face that is less extreme to the public to allow for that transitionary process. That's what soc dems were always striving to do. And sometimes they did it badly, I will admit.
Not just sometimes. I voted for Biden not because I liked Biden, but because I was sold a promise, and that promise did not happen. Just like many other promises that social democrats have promised me, I've given my vote and I've gotten bupkis. So I'm not excited to continue to play this game. It definitely feels like we're just gonna. This feels like a real bad relationship. It feels like, baby, I'm not gonna do it again. I promise. I'm gonna remember. And then it never happens. It never happens.
Right.
That's what I'm frustrated about.
I would never hurt you like that.
Atheo-pagan, I know you wouldn't. I know you wouldn't. I know you wouldn't. I know that. I know you would take care of me, and I would hold you. But Atheo-pagan and I go back. Sorry, but like, I don't know. The conversation about the fact that Democrats are too busy canceling each other to be effective. No, we're too busy being
no, I'm not saying Democrats are.
Liberal. Yeah, we're too busy being ineffective to do anything else. It's not the fact that we're arguing with each other. It's the fact that I don't think we feel like we're under enough threat, and I feel like the other side, right? Just like you were saying, Tori, the conservative, right-wing ultranationalists, they have built in a system where they feel like their entire way of life is under threat. And that's why they are acting like they are going to war, because to them they are. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you're going to see that kind of mobilization until the other side feels the same way.
We might get there this round. I don't know.
And if that's the case, then I think they'll come out. But to expect them to mobilize in that way without feeling that threat doesn't feel realistic to me. Atheo-pagan, I could talk to you all day. I do have other callers, and we have 3 minutes left of show.
We should do that sometime, by the way.
We absolutely should. Tori, Atheo-pagan, I wish that I could give you all more time, but we're going to dive into the next call, okay?
Yep, have fun.
All right.
Are you on Discord today?
I will be, but I need to make an important call after this show, and I'm going to be checking in with Tori. So it's going to be kind of limited, but I'm going to do my best.
Last thing I'll say before I go, John, you should get into Discord, and I should be able to talk to you, because you and I could rage at each other for a long time. Right.
Just make sure you record it. All right. See ya.
Yep.
Okay, so we have way more calls than we have time for, so I do want to address some of the callers and go through. We had Reuven, who wanted to call and talk about whether or not a person can choose their belief. I feel like epistemic issues like that would be perfect for next week. I have a guest on. You know who it is. Secular Rarity will be joining me, and I'm really excited to have Elliot on. And I think that would be a wonderful topic for that week's call. Thank you for sitting. Thank you for hanging on the line. Reuven has been waiting for over an hour, and the fact that we don't have enough time kills me. We're not going to give you the time that this conversation deserves. So if you call in next week, we'll make sure that we give that conversation the time it deserves. That said, thank you for calling in. Call back. Asa is calling and really wanted to talk about how what is killing this community is the fact that that community is what's needed and it's missing in action. And I feel like the heart of that, building community, is an entire conversation that we absolutely need to have. The first Monday of next month, Asa, if you could call in earlier, we can make sure that we get that time, because it's not just about arguing with people who don't agree with us. It's about giving each other resources. I feel like this would be a great example of finding reasons to do that. Do you agree, Tori? Yeah.
Yeah. I've been talking about this for a couple months for sure. Yeah.
So, Reuven, I'm going to drop the call, but I hope that you call in next week. Asa, I'm going to drop the call, but I hope you call in the first Monday of next month. I'm going to move on. There's somebody who, Hunter, is calling in from Arkansas. Hunter wants to talk about challenging theist believers with their beliefs. Hunter, call in next week. I'm going to be having Secular Rarity on. Elliot is going to be there with me, and I think we can really dig into that a lot more. I do want to take Nick in Massachusetts, though. Nick, talk to us. You're live on the air.
Okay. What I wanted to say, first of all, and I said this in the live chat, I disagree that it's the rich people who have the power. It's the poor people who have the power. The job of the rich is to keep the poor from knowing that. And as the disparity gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you end up with what happened in Rome. You end up with Marie Antoinette. You end up with all these sorts of things. So I think it's that was one correction I wanted to make. But somewhere in Africa, I guarantee you there is a little black girl who knows more and is smarter than Einstein. I guarantee you that. And the reason is just statistics. But she's never going to come up and cure cancer or do anything like that because she's poor and has never been given the opportunities. So helping the least among us is not only what you'd expect Christians to do, but is good for the rich. It's good for everybody. But what's good is that you never let that disparity get too far apart. And we're so anti-capitalism because of the fear of the Soviet Union in the 1980s, and it was used as just this easy way to talk about the enemy. And so now we don't realize that, at least by the American version of socialism, the fire department is socialized, the police are socialized, the military is socialized, and we experimented with a private military called Blackwater, and that did not go well. But the best example of how we sort of, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I don't want to just.
No worries.
There's a great.
I just want to make sure that you have the opportunity to, like, everything that you're saying we can dive into in a million places. And you're saying a lot of stuff that we would love to engage with. So I just want to make sure that we're focusing in on a specific topic so we can engage with that. And it looks like you originally wanted to talk about socialism and socialized things. Are you still in that place, or is there something like?
Yeah. So let me. I think the fire department used to be privatized, and in 1776, what they would do is you had to buy fire insurance, and it would put a shield on the walls between properties, and if you had that shield, then they knew you had insurance, and they'd put the fire out. Otherwise, the fire department would just sit and watch. And in New York, in 1776, a house started to catch on fire. Fire department showed up, no shield, so they let it burn. It caught on to two other houses. Neither of them had insurance, so they let those burn. It caught on to a fourth house that had insurance, but by this point, the fire had gotten so big, the fire department actually couldn't put it out, and a quarter of New York burned to the ground. It's the fire of 1776. And after that, they said, it might benefit everybody if we make the fire department socialized. And you have the exact same thing with medicine. Rich people do get cancer, and if they get cancer, I'd rather be rich than poor because you can pay easier for the kind of treatments that you need, but they still die of it. And it's easier. It costs us so much less money to give out free statins to people who need them than to treat someone in the emergency room when they have a heart attack. And the money that we're spending, we spend more than any other country in healthcare, but we are ranked 42 in outcomes. 42 in outcomes. There are absolutely problems with socialized medicine. There's problems with a socialized fire department. There's problems with every single system. But if we don't do this, then the disparity between the rich and the poor just get worse, and that hurts everybody, including the rich.
Tori, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking we need to adopt a system closer to.
No, go ahead.
I started rambling, and I'm like, oh, I'm muted. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the data is. It's definitely true that it costs less to house someone than to put them in jail 17 times during the year. I made up that number. Sorry, I should stop making up numbers. But yeah, no, caring for people's basic needs is better for the wealthy, and it's better for the rest of us, and cost less money. So it is kind of the opposite of small government to just let people languish, because then we end up paying millions of dollars for things that could just be very basic care. Absolutely.
Yep. And you compare that to other states, especially in the Scandinavian countries, and you can see that it works, and it works for everybody, including the rich. So if you're rich and you want a better life, then what you want to do is close that gap. That gap's always going to be there, and it's fine that there's a gap between the rich and the poor. I've got no problem with that. What I've got a problem with is people starving to death, people who don't have living, who don't have, and it's fixable, and it helps everybody if we fix it. That was all I wanted to say. I really appreciate the time, and I've been really enjoying the show.
Thanks, Nick. Really appreciate the call.
Yeah, that was so succinct.
Yeah, great. A plus.
Yeah, no, I everyone take notes. Take notes on Nick. Nick, thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Take care. Which is why in 1776, we pushed forward certain social remedies, because the fire department and the institution of socialism is why the United States never took off, actually. People don't know that.
That's why we didn't succeed.
That's why. Just like communism, any government, that's so fucking... Tori?
Yeah.
I know that I said that we would be ending at 11. It's been over 2 hours. And we've definitely needed to weed through the callers that have called in. I think that next time we're going to have more people who are lined up, ready to go right away. And I promise I won't take too much time. That way we can dive right into it. But what did you think of your first episode?
This is awesome. This is great. I had a lot of fun. I was very surprised by a lot of comments, which is great. It was a good time. I'm glad that I got to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
I would love to stay and chat for another hour, but I promised my kid I'd take him to the pool. So
totally understood.
Yeah.
All we need to do is read super chats, and I want to make sure we plug your podcast and everything like that too, because
sweet.
Duh. So let's read super chats first. Atheo Rakatru sent $10. Thank you. Says, please talk about the fact that even when people are given their basic needs, they still want to work. Absolutely. That's like Trek right there, right? Living in a world.
It's so, because again, we evolved working. We evolved to be doing things that benefit ourselves and our communities. Literally, this is yes.
Well, and you got it. It's not the work itself as much as it is feeling like you're benefiting the people around you, because we find so much value in taking care of our loved ones and being seen as somebody who is of value. And we value those kinds of things. So yeah, absolutely. But what's interesting is the fact that it is disconnected from work. The number of office workers who are not making a difference in the world, who are not getting the benefit of feeling like their work has value, don't see it. And so we definitely need to do things that make us feel like we're making a difference. So yeah. Okay. Next, A Wright sent $2. Thank you. Said Eric vaping because he cool like that. Just teasing. I know I have a habit. Appreciate you.
Nice.
My unfinished journey sent $6.66. Says, hail Nero, hail Eric and Tori, and hail meeting basic needs with socialized models. Love it.
Hell yeah.
John sent $5 and says, the court case that I was talking to you about was Dodge versus Ford Motor Company in 1919. You're right. Oh, thank you for the resource. Yeah. And
I'm gonna go look that up.
It is honestly, I feel like if we repealed that, we would take care of so many issues. The necessity that CEOs need to make money for their shareholders, and if they're not, they can be sued, and so you can be legally liable for not fucking people over. Is insane. It feels like the system is set. Yeah, it's crazy. All right, next we have. Here we go. My unfinished sock sent $2. Thank you. Says, don't whine about welfare fraud. Like and share. That's right. If you like the show and you want to support it, it's easy to do. Hit the like button, hit subscribe. All of those things help. Let other people know about this show. We're having great conversations. The way people are going to find out is if you share it out. So please, please do. And if you want to support the show, consider going to patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration. We've got amazing personalities who are going to be joining us, like Tori. Tori, how can people find you?
That's such a great question. So I have 2 podcasts, White Homework, which is about collective liberation and how we all get free, get our needs met, imagining different ways of doing things, but also looking at the data, right? And like following the data. So that's something that I'm super passionate about. And then I have a podcast for people who have left religion called Go Home Bible, You're Drunk, that I have a co-host on, Justin Gentry. He's a former evangelical minister. And so we just read the Bible through a very different lens. And sometimes we find interesting or cool things. Other times we don't like it so much. So it's a crapshoot. The Bible's a crapshoot. Let me see here. What else? I have a Patreon, patreon.com/Tori Glass, or I think it's also, you can just go to whitehomework.com. And I also post things there. I'm trying to get some of my stuff out of like the public view, not because I don't want it out there, but because it's just like there's no like enforcement on harassment issues on any of the social media anymore, because it's all the aspiring fascists who want to own social media platforms. So I'm posting some things there. You can sign up at a free tier if you would like. That exists. So just trying to get myself out of, like, I'm trying to catch fewer strays is what I'm trying to do. So it's just patreon.com/Tori Glass. If you search at Tori Glass, you can find all my social media pretty much. So
I honestly, if you decide that you want to make content to put out there and you don't want to deal with everything else, you should be able to do that. And it's incredibly valuable. I have an admission. I did not put those links in the description. I feel like a terrible host.
That's okay.
I want to make sure that I get those links in the description for this video as soon as humanly possible.
You want me to send them to you?
Absolutely,
I can just send them to you. Okay.
And could you stick around? I'm going to play the outro, and I'd love to talk to you afterward.
Sure.
But until next time. So I think I'd love to bring the like sign off that we used to do. And do you think you'd be up for joining me? So what we used to do is we'd start the show by saying, "This is Skeptic Generation, and we need to talk." And then we'd end it
awesome.
Yeah, and then we'd end it by saying, "We're glad we had this talk."
Okay.
So are you ready?
Yeah.
Until next time, we're glad we
had this talk.
Okay, let's try one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3. We're glad we had this talk.